On the Volumetrics tab of the Render Properties, we have here the Fog options. The fog is a great little adjustment that you can throw into your renders, especially some external and indeed even internal renders, to create haze and distance effects. It is volumetric, but it doesn't respond to lights as a volumetric does or anything of that nature, and it is very fast to render. So if we take it, we'll see that we've got a few options here. If we just try the first one, linear, then everything goes white. Reason why? Well, we've got our distance and amounts here. So at the minute, my fog is kicking in at 0 meters and it's reaching, in this case, 100% at 1 meter. So let's try it at 10 meters, shall we? And there you can see that we get this fog effect like this. This is just a straight linear fog. So at the minute, 0 to 10 meters and 0 to 100%. So that means that at 2 meters I've got 20%, at 5 meters 50%, and so on. We've also got non-linear options here, which will make the fall off that much tighter, like this. And there we see again with non-linear 2 that makes it, denser, shorter in. But most of the time it's probably easiest, unless you're trying to get a specific look, to just use realistic, in which case the further away we are from the fog, the denser it starts to become. How you tweak it? Well, you can tweak it for distance, so I could perhaps take it up to 20 meters like that. So now it's getting weaker, of course, or rather it's reaching full strength at a greater distance. You could perhaps put in a earlier, or should I say later, start distance, so that the fog effect doesn't start to come in at all until some distance away from our view. And of course, if you don't want the fog to go up to 100%, then you can, limit it down something like this, so as it's always weaker in this regard. You will notice, of course, that the fog is pure white, and we can, of course, just, change that very easily, give any color fog that we find appropriate for a given scene. But of course, what you can see it also does is to mask out our backdrop here. Any backdrop color or gradient, or indeed any HDRI or background image that we have loaded, will be masked by the fog. And for that, we have this option, use backdrop color, in which case the fog color makes no difference, and now the coloration is matched to whatever exists in the backdrop. When you mix this with the realistic fog type, it tends to give you a very realistic looking haze effect like this. This works especially well in outdoor scenes. If you're doing large vistas, then one of the problems that you can often encounter is that you can only, run your ground object so far, and you wind up with this hard line at the edge of wherever your ground is going off to, where it meets the sky. Generally, it's nice to soften that out, and thus if your sky is being done with a background image or HDRI or similar, then adding in fog, setting the distance, probably quite distant, of course, it depends on your actual scene, how far into the distance you're seeing, and then using the backdrop colour, that can sort out your horizon line very nicely indeed. Another place where it can come in really useful is in internal scenes, and so here, we've got this scene inside our sponsor here, and it would be nice to, give a bit of volumetric lighting to it. Of course, we can throw in actual volumetric lighting, which is, really nice and pretty, but of course, we would sort of expect, especially with the GI, to, see that same volume permeating the entire space. Of course, we could always use the GI and do global illumination volumetric lighting. It's certainly possible. It is also certainly very slow. And as such, bringing in fog like this, especially realistic fog, can lend to this sense of the volumetric permeating the entirety of the internal space like this, and help to give us something that looks much more, volumey, dusty air, without, of course, having the expense of a full scene global illumination volumetric. Subtle atmospheric haze effects like this can be really beneficial to the look of scenes such as this one. And achieving that without too great a hit to render time is quite obviously more favourable. There is, however, another use to which we can turn the fog, and that is when wanting to generate a custom depth buffer. Because we have control over the min and max distances here, and also of course the rate of fall off of the fog, then if we have a case where in compositing we want to be able to use a Z buffer or a depth buffer that maps out exactly a particular range of distances to use in post effects, depth of field blurring and the like, then we can do that quite simply here. We would use, of course, a white fog colour, set our distances as, of course, the max amount at 100%. We could choose a non-linear fall-off. Often we would want a linear fall-off for our fog. And then we can either render this as a separate pass to itself, or, indeed, we'll find that Lightwave gives us a specific fog buffer, which is just the fog layer. And so we could include it in our main render and pull it out. So there we have it, short and simple. This is the fog tool and the various ways that we can control and use it within our scenes and renders.